But without further ado, we'll get straight into our program. Our first speaker this morning is Fiona Whiteridge from the Refugee and Migrant Services Immigration New Zealand. She's going to talk about setting the direction from policy to practice, and I'm really keen on seeing this presentation. So I invite you to the stand, Fiona Whiteridge. If we can put our hands together, please.
Kia ora koutou and warm Pacific greetings to you all. My name is Fiona Whiteridge and I'm the General Manager of Refugee and Migrant Services at Immigration New Zealand, and the Pacific unit, who many of you deal with, sit within that branch. And it's an absolute pleasure today to be here presenting to you at this conference. The first thing I want to do is really recognise the strong relationships that have grown between New Zealand's horticulture and viticulture sectors and our Pacific partners. In nearly 18 years of working together, we have built something really special together. So it's great to see so many of the dignitaries from the Pacific here today. Thank you very much for coming. But also that speaks to our really shared success. As we look ahead, we know though that there is still some really important work to be done to strengthen and sustain these partnerships and to keep the scheme working really well. So the Minister yesterday outlined some of her key priorities, and I'll briefly cover what's next, and that's from a more operational perspective. I'll then step through some slides illustrating how the RSE scheme has evolved over time, what data tells us about its growth, its impact, and the changing dynamics of the scheme. Then I'll talk about how we're working together across government, industry and communities to support RSE workers and to help employers comply with the rules. I'll also touch on some of the partnerships we've built and how frameworks like Ola Manuia and Te Vaka Moana help guide our work in ways that are culturally respectful and meaningful. Finally, I'll wrap up with a look ahead, how MBIE sees the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead and how we're preparing for those. So first of all, I'm going to talk about some RSE policy and operational improvements. I thought it might be helpful just to recap some of the changes that were made to the scheme last year. So the cap was increased up another 1,250 workers from the previous year, but we're still seeing challenges in reaching this. Due to challenges, and this is mainly to do with challenges with recruitment, accommodation availability, labour market pressures and weather disruptions. Employers now have more flexibility with the 30-hour minimum work requirement, which now can be averaged over a 4-week period, offering flexibility in response to weather disruptions and seasonal variability. Workers returning for their third season or more must be paid minimum wage plus 10%. Others must receive at least the New Zealand minimum wage. There's greater flexibility for workers to move between employers and regions with an extended grace period of 21 days, and Timor-Leste has been added to the list of eligible countries. This month, we have also had the accommodation freeze lifted. To bridge the gap until a permanent cost methodology is developed, a new interim increase of up to 2.5% in accommodation costs took effect from 18th of August and applies to all ATRs from that date. In terms of next steps, the Accommodation Working Group comprising of industry, Pacific liaison officers and MBIE policy will keep working to develop a permanent accommodation cost methodology. Work is then expected to commence on accommodation standards after that. There was an inter-agency operational understanding signed on the 21st of August to enable recruitment and mobilisation of Timor-Leste workers. And TVOM is working with MFAT and Timor-Leste to arrange an introductory visit in October 2025 for employers interested in recruiting workers from Timor-Leste. For more details, for those of you who know Matt Gibbs, and I have seen him here this morning, he's over there at the edge, please contact him as he's our key point of contact on that. Okay, so turning to the operational side. To facilitate improvements to the governance and delivery of the scheme, we have established within MBIE an RSE operations group and an RSE governance group. And this governance structure allows us to take a view of the end-to-end scheme and brings together all the component parts, from visa processing to labour inspectorate, compliance and the engagement teams. And this makes sure that all the decisions we are making are coordinated and looking for ways to continually improve how the scheme runs, i.e. making it better for employers and workers. So from an operational perspective, improvements have included establishing a New Zealand bank account to make visa payments easier, making sure ATR applications can continue to be submitted via email to the RSE unit, and improving the availability of RSE data with monthly statistics now available on the INZ website. Our current focus areas include making it sure it's easy for employers to understand what's expected under the scheme. As the regulator, we're here to support you, and tools like the ATR checklist are designed to give clear, practical guidance. Improving guidance on what to do in difficult situations, such as when a worker passes away or has to stay in New Zealand for medical or justice reasons. Our engagement partners, Labour Inspectorate team and the RSE unit put a lot of work into supporting parties when these things occur. We are making sure our standard operating procedures streamline the process required to extend visas for RSE workers that are required to stay beyond their RSE visa expiry. And you'll have an opportunity to meet the team and ask questions of them later this afternoon. We're also reviewing our end-to-end recruitment and mobilisation processes, which is especially important with changes across the Pacific and the introduction of Timor-Leste. We're analysing patterns of deductions and IRD information to form an up-to-date picture of the RSE scheme's economic value to Pacific countries and to individual workers. We're also considering what a graduated assurance regime could look like. This would focus checks and balances on those employers who pose most risk and allow employers with a strong track record to benefit from faster processing, fewer checks and more flexibility. And we are also exploring how we could let employers know the number of years that RSE workers have been in the scheme. So, now I'd like to have a look at how the RSE scheme has changed over time. Just a caveat around the data that we're about to use. The following slides use data from the Statistics New Zealand IDI, or Integrated Data Infrastructure. These are not official statistics, so they've been created for research purposes and so should be viewed with that in mind. So, the first graph shows the growth in this RSE scheme over time. So this data shows the number of unique individuals who came to New Zealand on RSE visas between 1 April and 30 March the next year. There's obviously been a steady increase since the scheme began, but of course with a dip in 2020-21 due to the COVID-19 border closures. But since then, numbers have recovered and continue to trend upward. And as was noted in the TVOM seminar series in July, there are signs that recruitment trends are starting to slow, with some New Zealand regions and some Pacific countries seeing a drop in numbers. Most RSE workers are young men and they're under 35. I don't think that will be a surprise to many of you. And this likely reflects what many of you are seeing on the ground. It may also suggest that older workers who joined the scheme in earlier years are no longer returning. And overall, the proportion of female workers in the scheme remains small. So a typical RSE worker in the 2024 season was employed for 195 days. So the data shows that the average worker spends 6.5 months in New Zealand, which is in line with the conditions of their RSE visa. Workers are maximising the time they are here more so than they were 10 to 15 years ago. Next, the next thing our insights team want to look at is how the length of stay differs between men and women, but we don't have this split yet, but we are working on that and we'll look to see if we can work out that data. RSE workers' income has increased by 48% since 2008, adjusting for inflation but before tax. So to put that in perspective, earning $100 in 2008 would now be earning around $148 for the same amount of work in 2024, and this has stabilised over the last 5 years. Both men and women earn about the same. This, of course, is not the same as take-home pay, as there is tax and deductions to be applied on top of that, so just bear that in mind with this. And remembering that there is a flat 10% tax on RSE worker earnings, which is applied by the New Zealand government. This graph illustrates the income trends of RSE workers based on the number of seasons they have completed. The data clearly reveals a pattern. The more seasons a worker returns for, the higher their monthly earnings. For example, an RSE worker with 10 years of experience earns nearly $900 more per month compared to someone in their first season. So, and it's expected, and that the more skilled and experienced the workers are, the more productive they are. So that seems logical and sensible. So most of the RSE workers in 2024 were in their first or second season. This is in line with the average age of workers in the scheme being under the age of 35. So younger workers dominate the scheme currently, but those that come back for more seasons are likely to earn more. This raises important questions about workforce planning and retention. How can we ensure there is support for both employers and workers to encourage long-term participation in the scheme and a stable workforce? And that's a good question I think would be worth thinking about. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the collective approach that we take to the RSE scheme. So I think, as we all know, the success of the scheme depends on strong partnerships and collective effort. And I really want to acknowledge the contributions of everyone involved: industry leaders, employers, Pacific governments, and most importantly, the workers themselves. So MBIE has partnerships with an enormous number of groups to make this happen. So firstly, with the labour sending units in Pacific countries, with MFAT for diplomatic alignment, and with MSD to ensure the RSE scheme complements the New Zealanders' first employment policy. So with MFAT, we work to support Pacific countries' capacity building. I really want to acknowledge Mark, Darren, Emma, who I think is speaking after me, Helen and Holly, who we work with closely on the Strengthening Pacific Labour Mobility Programme. This program, delivered by the Tosawaku o Manu team, focused on Pacific capacity building to support the success of the RSE scheme. We work closely with Health New Zealand Te Whatu Ora to provide public health and resources. Recently, this included dengue fever information. I want to thank Talalele Tofale and Ali Leota in particular here. With New Zealand Police to engage with workers on safety and crime prevention, and we're currently exploring updates to the police video resources. We also commission research and surveys to assess the scheme's effectiveness and apply the insights to inform future policy and engagement approaches. The current research seminar organised through TVOM with Dr. Richard Bedford is an example of this. In terms of working with industries, employers, with you, there are some specific initiatives that I particularly want to call out. The first being the Ola Manuia framework, and I'm pleased to let you know that this will be available after the conference. It was co-designed by all of us, by INZ, RSE workers, employers, industry and Te Whatu Ora. Its 5 pillars seek to foster a sense of collective purpose, spiritual, mental, physical well-being and connectedness as a way of overcoming health and well-being challenges that many RSE workers may face. Many of us understand and apply lots of the ideas in it already, but the value of this framework is that it brings everything together in one place as a shared goal and with ideas for going further. The name Ola Manuia means living well, and that's exactly what it's about. Pacific cultural awareness delivered by the Centre for Pacific Languages to strengthen understanding and support. And one of my personal favourites, on superannuation, Matt, back over here again, from TVOM has hosted evening sessions with interested workers. To date, 5,437 workers have registered and sent $9.5 million home in voluntary retirement savings over the past year. And finally, of course, we work together on crisis response. We've worked closely and very well with you to respond to events such as Cyclone Gabrielle, the Vanuatu earthquake and the Nelson Tasman floods, and that demonstrates our partnership and how we can all come together in times of need. Also within my responsibilities at Immigration New Zealand is the Welcoming Communities program, and this is aimed at supporting local councils around New Zealand to bring partners together to welcome newcomers. Although it is aimed at newcomers of all types, including refugees, migrants and international students, it complements our work in the RSE space by helping local communities be places where seasonal workers feel welcomed, valued and supported. This photo here is of a multicultural football festival in central Otago, a result of the work to create an environment for inclusion via sports. Now, what we know from an employer perspective is that welcoming communities has been proven to support worker well-being and retention, enhance the reputation of employers and employers' relationships with local councils and residents, as they are seen to be contributing to positive social outcomes, give access to resources, events and services that can support you and your workers, including translated materials, orientation sessions and cultural events that help workers settle in more easily. The program encourages partnerships between local government, employers and community groups, creating opportunities for shared initiatives that benefit both workers and businesses. And I really urge you to contact your local council and get involved if you are not already. So, looking ahead. As the Minister spoke about yesterday, other immigration priorities have slowed progress on the remaining parts of the RSE review. While that's frustrating, it's also a good chance for industry to work with the Minister to help shape what comes next. MBIE's strategic priorities are to support compliance. We understand that navigating compliance can be hard, and that's why we're placing a strong emphasis on clarity, making sure employers know exactly what's expected of them. We've developed practical tools and guidance like the ATR employer checklist to make it easier to meet requirements. Our goal is to ensure compliance feels like a support, not a stumbling block. As mentioned earlier, we are also looking to evolve our assurance model to introduce a more graduated approach. This means lighter touch oversight for employers who are consistently meeting their obligations. As part of the policy review, when it happens, we want to introduce a broader set of tools to respond to breaches of RSE standards in a way that's proportionate and fair. This might be reduced RSE allocations, stand-down periods or conditional approvals. This would align the RSE scheme with the accreditor employer work visa system and Australia's PALM scheme. We're also really focused on supporting the horticulture and viticulture industries. We recognise that RSE is a critical part of labour supply and that a lack of RSE workers can lead to unharvested crops affecting domestic supply and reducing export earnings. We also know that RSE workers help to drive regional growth by contributing to local economies through spending and housing demand, and thereby support jobs and services in rural communities. Establishing an enduring and workable accommodation methodology is part of this, as is our operational improvements program of work, which I spoke to before, and that's taking practical steps to strengthen the RSE scheme, support employers and ensure workers are well cared for, ultimately helping the industry thrive. Bringing Timor-Leste on board will help strengthen the scheme too. Finally, embedding the cultural awareness and Ola Manuia frameworks are important to guide employers and workers to increase their knowledge about each other and work collectively. So, thank you for your time this morning. If you've got any requests, please, the engagement partner team are all here, so I would urge you to direct any questions or comments that you have to them, and they will be able to assist you. And just thank you very much for your time this morning. I hope you get a lot out of this conference, and I hope you found that useful. Ka kite. Oh, you had some questions?
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Are there any questions from the floor? Yep.
Yes, I just was wondering, before we look to actually have a digital program or platform for the ATR application, similar to what we've got with AWB?
Great question. You'll be pleased to know that I advocate for that quite regularly within Immigration New Zealand. And if anyone knows Marcel Foley, who's the head of operations out of Poteroa, she's a big advocate for that too. Immigration New Zealand is currently doing a large transformational change program called Our Future Services. As part of that, we are looking to move all our applications online and into a new system called Adept. And just recently, a couple of weeks ago, one of our big milestones was happening as we moved all student visa applications into Adept. There is a program of work and a schedule of work. In essence, it's about the biggest visas and also the complexity of the visas. So the sorts of visas we're moving on soon or have moved on are student, we're looking at visitor, AWV is on there. That's on there because that was one of the first visas that was developed as the new system was going live. I think at the moment that it's about 2029 that RSE is on there. But we're hoping to be able to move quicker than that. It simply comes down to numbers and amounts, right? So when you look at the numbers of visas that go through, students, I can't remember, but it'll be hundreds of thousands of visas that go through a year. So that is how the schedule is determined.
Yes, can I just
Yeah, there's a whole range of things, and yeah. Yeah, I'll certainly take that feedback back. That's feedback that, yeah, I'll take back.
Test.
There we go.
There we go. Sorry about that. At the risk of labouring a point, this is obviously a hot topic for us, and I would absolutely reinforce that point that was just made. So, understand what it is to implement big programs of work like that, and understand that trying to get up the queue is challenging. Getting your processes sorted before it actually goes onto the system is a big part of making it work effectively at the end.
Yes.
So that process improvement, it's something yesterday they were talking about. Is it 8 weeks? I think on average for. Have I got that number right? 8 to 10 weeks. Australia was 8 to 10 weeks 4 years ago and is now at 2 weeks. So, and that's who we're competing against. So I want to hand this problem and ask you to have a really good look at what process improvement can happen in preparation for the digital improvement.
Absolutely, and that's absolutely right. And that's part of the reason some of these things take so long, because we don't want to just put straight on to digital what we have now. We want to actually make sure that what you put into the new ADEPT system is actually going to be much better. And that's something that, we've worked with, so in the student space, for example, we worked with universities and we worked with educational providers to try and make sure that what we were building was going to be as best as it could be. And similarly, and that is a commitment I can make to you, that we will work with industry to make sure that what we put online as part of ADEPT, we will work with industry to actually try and build something that's going to be as effective as possible for everybody.
Final question from Safita.
Chair. Seth Howley from Team Tonga. A very quick question. Thank you for all the data and what has been collected so far. One of the expectations from our workers is to contribute to productivity. Would you be able to collect and help us formulate some kind of a formula to assess how productive we are as a team, so that we can understand the value of our contribution to the New Zealand economy? If you were able to do that for us, I'm sure that collectively we'll come up with something that will demonstrate that what we have been contributing has been of worth, and that there is a number to go along with it.
Okay. Thank you. That's an excellent question. I don't have an answer for that question, but I can see my team furiously writing over there, and they will take that away. So we will see what we can do in that space as well. Thank you. All right. Thank you.